Welcome to Fueling the Fire, a podcast for Wildland firefighters to come to get some information about contracting. Today I have Louis Liphart with Inland Fire. Louis, how about you give us a little background of yourself, kind of what your experiences in Wildland Fire and what you plan on doing for this year?
Sure. Started in 2020, got my Firefighter 2 certification, was going to work for one company, but was kind of on their backup roster. I ended up working for a different company and went out, I believe it was in August, and got 50 plus days that season. First day out on the line, knew that I loved the job and have continued with it ever since. So I guess I've worked 5 full seasons, and this is going to be my 6th season. Last year, I made the executive decision about halfway through the season that I wanted to start my own company. With the new contracts opening up, that was kind of an opportunity to be able to get in, and I felt as though I had finally acquired the necessary knowledge and skills to be able to go out on my own. So I've been tirelessly working for, the past 6+ months, putting the company together, buying the truck, buying a tank, outfitting the skid unit, getting it to the point that just a couple days ago I was able to apply for the Viper contract, which is a solicitation that they put out. That's open for about 30 days, and finally was able to pull the trigger on that.
Congratulations.
Right now
That's really cool.
Thank you.
I think we met kind of at the tail end of, or the beginnings of that whole process with you. I was up in Sacramento. We were talking about how you wanted to start this thing. We were looking at the contracts, and you were the one who showed me how to look at the Viper contract, which I think is very interesting aspect to all this, because being a new firefighter too, and this is, like I said in the last episode, this is my first year doing this. So all of this was new, and you really helped me kind of get the understanding of what Viper is and how to look at the contracts. What does that mean? How much they get paid, et cetera, et cetera. So let's actually talk about that real quick. So the Viper contract itself, you just went through that whole process. So what was that process looking like?
Sure. So Viper is the virtual incident procurement system. It is the system that the Forest Service uses for obtaining a myriad of different resources. The resource that I am doing this year is a Type 6 Wildland engine. It's a somewhat long process and can be a little bit intimidating to people that have never done it, but with thorough research and talking to other fellow contractors, it's really a somewhat painless process. You start off by getting yourself a sam.gov account, making sure that gets into an active status, building out your resource so that it meets all of the Viper specifications for your equipment, what you have to have on the truck itself. And then once you've reached that point, you actually need to do a Viper vendor login account setup. And then once you have your vendor login, you wait until So the contract is actually, it's a solicitation from the Forest Service. And once that solicitation is live, which you can check on the Viper vendor login, you're able to submit a quote for your resource or resources, depending on how many you have.
That's very important, right? Submitting the quote, because that's how much you're going to be charged each day, essentially.
Yep. So it's pivotal. Without that quote, you are unable to obtain the agreement. And the agreement, you have to choose a DPL, which is a dispatch priority list, so a dispatch center that you want to run out of. And once you make that decision, you figure out your daily rate, which is going to account for everything, all of your expenses, including paying your firefighters, maintaining the truck, fuel, insurance, you name it, you have to account for it. And then you also have to account for making your profit. And you have to figure out where you want to fit on that DPL, which you can only make your best guess, but you can see what other contractors were charging the year before. And then you can make a pretty educated guess on where you're going to fit into that DPL, what position.
What choice did you make? Where'd you sit? Like, where'd you want to sit on the DPL? Did you go,
Sure.
some of the contractors we worked for last year screwed themselves over because they went too high, right? And then some of them, went too low, which means they're higher on the priority list. Some of them went really low because even though they go out less, they'll still make the money. So what went into your thought process of doing that?
Sure. So as a new company owner, I wanted to do my best to ensure that I would be going out. So I didn't want to be numerically too high on that list. The dispatch that I chose was the Central Washington list. Last year, there were 37 Type 6 engines on that list, which is a somewhat big list compared to a lot of other DPLs. But I figured trying to land somewhere in the middle or middle bottom portion of that list would put me in a good position. And the price that I quoted, I'm hopefully going to land somewhere between 12 and 15 on that DPL. So even on a slower season, in theory, I should still get work. On a busy season, it would be great to be making, some more money. But at this point, with the investment that I've made and trying to ensure work for my firefighters, I chose to go a little bit lower and make a few less dollars. But the idea is, even if I'm making less money, hopefully, another 4 or 5, 6 days out on the line will account for that. So I'll do some more work, but hopefully come out even or possibly even ahead.
So we were talking a little bit before the show, and you were saying that you're going to go out with another crew in order to help front a lot of the money for this. Do you see a lot of other contractors doing that?
Yeah, I see some contractors that own equipment running with other outfits to make, a little bit of vacation money or help out with bills. I'm in the Northwest, so our season generally doesn't kick off until, early July for contractors. That's kind of an average time for us. It can be earlier, it can be later, but having made a contact in the Southwest, I'm going to try and go out early this season. I've got to pay my guys every 2 weeks. Which is great for the worker, but makes it more difficult for the owner. But that's the way it should be. People shouldn't go without, and it's difficult to plan for, months of no income. So trying to get my finances right so that I've got money for fuel and insurance, maybe some unexpected repairs during the season. The cash flow that I'll get from working early season will almost guaranteed be not enough to write the checks for my guys, though. Being a new contractor, it's going to be difficult. And I've actually secured a line of credit to be able to pay my guys that payroll, it's hefty.
Absolutely. I know a lot of guys that do that for contractors just because it's hard to front that amount of money up front. But that's awesome that you got that going. So you mentioned that you're going with those guys from the Southwest. Just contacted the crew out of Washington. He runs out of the Southwest regions as well. He has trucks down there. But he was saying that he thinks that the Southwest is going to be blowing up this year. That's what a lot of people are talking about. And have you heard that too, or what are your vibes on kind of what your experience is down there? I think after our role in California, you went down there, right, to Arizona?
Yep. Yeah. So I was on the West Fire last year down in Arizona. We were on night shift, which has its ups and downs, but we were there for 2 weeks. But it's always difficult to tell. It's always the question, right? What's going to happen this season? I have not personally heard that it's going to be a busy season in the Southwest, but that being said, I could see that. It's been pretty quiet for a couple years down there. The last big season they had in that neck of the woods was that Calf Canyon year, which was 3 years ago, I believe. So it kind of comes in waves, right? So at the Northwest last year was ripping big time.
Where you were
all
right
of the
close
DPLs. Yep. So the Northwest, we completely tapped out the DPLs, and we were pulling people from all over the nation for help. And I could see the Southwest being busy. Like I said, it's been relatively quiet. And usually when you have a region that's quiet for a few years, it ends up coming back with a vengeance. So I could see that. Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. It's pretty wild. Yeah, I that Northwest region this year, just up by you and all around you, just was blowing up and wild. It was crazy to see that what's that map called? What's the app? Watch Duty.
Watch Duty.
Yeah, just blowing. That whole region was all the time. I mean, did you guys have any concerns up there? I mean, because you're like on the both Idaho and Washington.
Yep. So yeah, here in Moscow, Idaho, there were a couple fires that were like relatively close. I think it was the Cougar Creek, I think is what it was right down the road near Pullman, Washington, which is right across the border. And then right at the end of the season here in town, we ended up having again, relatively small fire. I think it was maybe 100 plus acres, but yeah, they were able to get that under control in a pretty timely manner. Yeah, nothing hit too close to home, but yeah, northern Idaho near McCall and that kind of area last year, yeah, it got hit pretty hard. But yeah, where I'm at, it's kind of on the edge of the Palouse region, which is a lot of rolling hills, a lot of farm country. We do have like Moscow Mountain right next to us, and that's very treed. But for the most part, it's relatively quiet around here a lot of the time. Not saying it can't happen, but yeah, it's a big population here. So anytime something does happen close to town, it's taken really seriously, just like most major metropolitan areas. But in the event of a fire with seriously high, winds, there's not a whole lot to do. A big one that happened a couple of years ago, not last year, year before, was Medical Lake up by Spokane. Again, major metropolitan area. And they tried to jump on it. There were a couple little hiccups in that whole system for getting people on the incident, but that resulted in many homes being destroyed, evacuating the whole town. So when you have, a truly wind-driven, high wind-driven fire, you just kind of have to get out of the way. They can do the best that they can, but with the air resources, even they're limited in high winds.
We saw that with the Eden and Palisades and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, my grandmother's house just burnt down in that fire. I was just there, and it was crazy to see that just decimated in LA. I mean, so much population just gone. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's a bummer. Sorry to hear about that.
That's all right. It's it's actually, the insurance is working out and everything. She got in there early, so it's all working out for the best. But
awesome.
So kind of going back to you and your rig, the one that you just built. You sent me pictures of all those really cool things you welded up. So let's kind of talk about what Viper requires for a Type 6. Tank size, what do they require for a Type 6?
Sure. So, yeah, I'll try and give a pretty good spectrum of, everything that's required. It's pretty lengthy.
Sure. And just the general
starting
big
off,
stuff,
Yeah, sure. So Type 6 engine has to have all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive capability. You cannot run a two-wheel drive Type 6. So that's kind of the base. When you're looking at a truck, you need to get all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive. Next thing you want to look at is the GVWR, which is the gross vehicle weight rating. You want to make sure that you have proper payload for your tank, your water, your tools, and your crew. There are some guys that run 350 3500s, and they're able to just barely by the skin of their teeth make GVWR, eat a light lunch kind of a thing. But a lot of guys, most people run 450 4500 or the 550 5500 series trucks.
I believe those are 19.5 weight on themselves, and then adding up the water weight, the crew weight, the whatever weight. I mean, you're right, you're barely making it with the end of all that, yeah?
Yep. So there actually is a maximum GVWR that you are allowed for a Type 6, and off the top of my head, it is somewhere around 19.5. You actually, you can't go above a certain GVWR. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's either 19.5 or 19.75. But, so yeah, you have to take that into consideration. I went with a 5500, reason being, there's different, advantage points that get assigned to an engine, based upon, is it three or four different factors? There's the year of the engine. So if it's 10 years or newer, you're going to get advantage points. If an automatic foam system versus a manually regulated one, that will give you advantage points. But the biggest one, and the one that I really made sure that I hit, was the 301 gallons technically. So 301 to 399 gallons gives you the maximum advantage points for the volume on the truck. So I needed to account for, at a minimum, 301 gallons of water, which is a lot of weight. Just doing a quick calculation. So 301 times 8.34, which is how much water weighs per gallon. So just water weight, I needed to account for, about 2,500 pounds weight. So a 450 would have sufficed for that. But the reason I went with the 5,500 is I didn't want to be close to that GVWR and working that truck too hard, right? So when you, just like with towing, right? So if your towing capacity is 10,000 pounds, you don't want to be towing 9,500 pounds. It'll do it, but it's not going to do it. It's not going to want to, right? Yeah, and it's going to cause extra wear and tear. So choosing the style and size of the truck is important, and then moving on to the tank. So there's 3 different categories for tank size. I went with the largest for those advantage points, and then you have your pump. So the pump pressure, 150 psi plus. They actually put an outlet, so it looks like a hose adapter onto your 1.5-inch outlet, and it's somewhere like a 1/2-inch diameter hole that's on there, and then you have to crank the pump all the way up, open that valve, and whatever pressure you're able to create with that fitting on there is what dictates your pump performance. So I ended up going with a 4-stage pump head. It's very similar to the Mark III pump head that we use for the little 2-stroke portable pumps. It's very high pressure, and again, the idea is trying to not overwork my equipment. Majority of the time I'll be running maybe 100 to 150 psi. It's capable of far more than that, but trying to just give it a nice little working range so that it's just kind of chugging along instead of running itself. Right. So you need the requirements. You have your tank, your pump, you have to be able to draft. So you have to set up your plumbing so that you have a drafting capability. You need a foam system. I went with a manually regulated Scotty through the pump foam proportioner. And then you're going to be looking at all of the different tools, packs, and just all of the other required items on that truck.
So do they have a setup where they have a water pool set down below where you have to draft from? Do they have it's all set up and you just lined up Type 6s to Kingdom Come and you're just going there, boom, 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 test it, go? Or how does that work for the testing process?
Well, for the testing process, it's kind of up to you. In Region 6 this year, they've made an interesting decision to do absolutely no hands-on inspections of any equipment. They're essentially just doing, I had to take pictures for my submission at the front of the rig, back, each side, the manufacturer, the build plate that's on the door that kind of, shows the GVWR, the year of the vehicle, VIN, all that good stuff, the foam proportioner, and then 2 weight slips showing dry and wet weight, so that they can calculate how many gallons you have. So this year there's none, which I'm kind of bummed about. I wanted to make for sure that I had everything right. For sure. But for the drafting process, it's kind of up to you. Local river or lake or some type of water source. If you got a buddy with a pool or something, but it's I'm pretty confident that my system will draft. You cut off your the tank to pump, you cut off that valve, then you have your valve that goes out to your draft source, and then that comes into the pump, you prime that, and then you're essentially feeding the water through your recirculation valve back into the tank. So at this point I still don't know because I haven't done it yet.
You made that, right? You made that whole pump system, welded it all up?
Yep. So I actually put the pump itself together. They sell pre-manufactured pumps, but they charge a premium just for essentially attaching the speed increaser and the pump head to the motor. They charge pretty big premium. So I sourced out the speed increaser and the pump head, made it all that together myself, and then I put it all together. And then the manifold, which is what you've been referring to for the welding portion, I made that. It's kind of like it's a 4x4, 2-foot stainless kind of pylon sitting vertically, and it's got 2.5-inch water discharges, a 3/4-inch water discharge on the front, and then in the rear it has an 1.5-inch recirculation, an 1.5-inch inlet from the pump, and then it has the foam proportioner outlet that runs through the foam proportioner, and then I have my booster line. It's an inch booster line that comes off the backside there as well. I welded all that up, and then the rest of the plumbing was It was somewhat easy. Hadn't done a whole lot of plumbing in my past, but that was a learning experience in itself.
That's awesome.
Yeah, learning how to thread stuff together and not get leaks, and cutting down the hose to the proper length for the different in feeds and out feeds that you have, routing everything. But yeah, it was a fun process, and I actually look forward to doing it again sometime.
Absolutely. I mean, are you planning on going? I mean, obviously you just got done with this, and we'll see how this year goes and next year and so on. But would you like to start growing? I mean, have you done the math on what it would take to actually be profitable? Is it 1 truck, 2 trucks, 3 trucks? I mean, we know companies that are huge that have, a bunch of trucks, and then some people just have 2 or 3. So where are you going in the future, and what do you think is going to be the best?
Sure. So
what's that happy medium,
Right. So, this first season, hoping for an average or busy season, and then going to kind of determine from there. Unfortunately, they just went back to a 5-year contracting cycle. It was 3 years, I believe the past 2 contracts. It may have just been 1. But yeah, we're back to a 5-year cycle, which is good once you secure a contract, because then you've got it for 5 years. But it puts you in a position where if you do want to add equipment, you have to wait, substantially longer. There is a clause in the agreement that says that the contracting officer at their discretion can add and remove equipment every year. But, the big asterisk there being at their discretion.
Meaning if you wanted to, let's say, add something to your contract, not to get a new contract, to your contract, you could do that at the discretion of the contracting officer.
So yeah, I could add equipment to my contract, and they, again, at their discretion, can open a new period for submissions, even new submissions. So it doesn't have to be an existing contract. It can be a new submission. So yeah, and the idea is see how this first season goes. If I make enough and I'm feeling up to building another truck, yeah, I do see the possibility and a good likelihood of adding more equipment. It is the most profitable you'll ever be as a smaller or small medium-sized contractor is running 1 truck. As owner-operator, you don't have to pay an engine boss, which is the highest paid position. And then once you start adding equipment, you start dealing with staffing. Staffing is expensive, and it's a headache industry to hire in general. And then even, people that are, dependable, life happens, right? So they have a loved one die, they have, an emergency. It doesn't matter what it is. Something happens and they have to leave. And now you're, stuck trying to find somebody in the middle of a, busy season. So it comes with its risks, but it obviously comes with its rewards. Sure. That's why you see a lot of contractors with, 3, 5, 10, 20 pieces of equipment. The more you have, the more you make, but the more you're taking on. Not only from a headache perspective, but also a financial risk perspective, because every piece of equipment that you have out there, it can break, people can get hurt. So you really have to trust your people that are operating these pieces of equipment, that they're doing it properly to maintain it, and that they're not going to end up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking more on the operating side of fire. So doing trucking stuff, doing swamping, looking into in the future doing some heavy equipment operating, that type of stuff. And a lot of that is coming down to, people just don't trust others. A lot of the stuff,
Yep,
rightfully so. I mean, there's people that will use and abuse, so on and so forth. So, but it's it's definitely, I can see the hardships of getting people, just trying to find people to replace, me when I had to leave that time in California. It was, a thing, but it worked out.
For sure.
But yeah. Well, anything else you want to bring up or talk about? I think those are all the things I had. Interesting, a lot of information about the contracting side and type 6s and what goes into it.
Yeah.
Would you ever looking to get into type 3?
It's a difficult question. It's funny. A lot of people, they do ask that question. Say, why not go with a type 3? They make more money, which in general, compared to a type 6, you do make more on your daily rate, but you now have a substantially larger vehicle. I'd say a better half of that fleet you're going to need a CDL for. So now you need to find a CDL driver, which you're going to need to pay more. And the biggest thing that kind of keeps me away from the type 3 arena is maintenance. So on a type 6, I have some pretty good mechanical background, so I'm able to, fix almost anything on a Type 6. It's just a giant pickup truck, right? Once you get into the Type 3 arena, some guys are running 55 as Type 3s, but you're going to see a lot of, like internationals, freight liners, bigger trucks that are going to be truly medium duty trucks. And the tires, just replacing a set of tires, like on a, 450, 550, you're going to be looking at $2, $3, maybe $4,000. Whereas, on a bigger truck, it's a lot heftier, $6, $7, $8,000. And then parts availability. And then, it's easier to work on smaller rigs. So the maintenance costs go far up. You then have to look for somebody with a CDL and just bigger equipment. It's more difficult to run. And the Type 6 in the Northwest and in general is going to see more calls than a Type 3, just because of its utility, right? So you can get into smaller areas. You can work a little bit more effectively. The Type 3 kind of shines with the water shuttling capability, right? So, the Type 3 that I've worked on in the past had 1,000 gallons, and that's awesome. So a lot, but then you kind of get stuck in the position of, hey, we need this porta tank refilled. Hey, can you, just top off these guys? So you become a glorified water shuttle. Which isn't the worst thing, or pumping hose lays, things like that. So yeah, I mean, it's not an impossibility. If I came across one that was at a great price point, and I had the money in my pocket, then I'd consider it. But I think that, Type 6s for the most part are going to be the realm that I stay in. There's other equipment out there that it's good to run from a finance perspective, like chippers and a few other things, but I have no experience with that, nor do I have any desire
I did a chipping roll
to work on those.
My last roll was a chipping roll, and I was like, oh, man, brutal.
It is brutal. It keeps you busy, and it gets you some exercise. But yeah, and then staffing for that kind of stuff again. Like you run into those issues where it's difficult work, and I mean the pay is good, but yeah, it's a lot easier to staff an engine where you're going to be out having fun or doing whatever else.
And the chipping rolls, you don't have to have, as my understanding, red card. You just have to have certain, like a pack test done and something, maybe an RT one. I'm not too sure, but
yeah,
RT 130 for sure.
I believe. Yep, RT 130, and I can't 100% speak on that because I don't have a ton of experience with it. But yeah, I believe it's an RT 130 and think a pack test. I'm not sure on that, but yeah, there are some smaller qualifications. But yeah, you don't have to have an engine boss. A qualified, person with more qualifications to be able to run that type of, piece of equipment.
Have you done your pack test yet? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How'd you do?
Good. Yeah. I went down to Lewiston and did it with a company that I did a saw class with a few years back. And I got 37:45, which is not too shabby. A little slower than the past 2 years, but I'm getting older.
Now I know I need to beat 37:35, so I need to beat this year.
I got the RT out of the way for the hopeful possibility of working down the Southwest early this season. Yeah, it's a necessary evil that we have to do that. RT 130 every year, which and in all reality, it's just it's the same videos we've watched over and over again, and deploying the test shelter and all that stuff. But yeah, it's important, and hopefully you get a little nugget of information and kind of gets you back into that thought process and rhythm of getting ready for fire. And Northwest, we still have months to go, but yeah, I know I'm excited and ready for the season.
Heck yeah. So I mean, kind of this part of this podcast too is to talk about the resources that we need as to get our certifications wildland firefighters. We were just kind of talking before that you had a little bit of trouble finding an RT 130. I'm having a huge trouble finding an RT 130 over here on the East Coast. What are some places that you use to find those resources, the RT 130s or Sawyer classes or anything you really want to do? How do you find these classes?
Sure. Couple different ways to go about it. So the easiest way is if you're already in the industry and you know someone, right, that is an MOU that provides classes, but obviously we're trying to focus on people that don't have that knowledge. The best way to go about it, I guess there's a couple different ways. So the NWCG, which is the National Wildland Coordinating Group, you're going to get on their website, and there are some resources that you can select for the different regions that you might be in. So for the West Coast, there's going to be a lot more offerings than the East Coast, just because of the prevalence of the wildfire. But yeah, you can select that, and that will kind of show you the different offerings, different providers for that. You contact the provider, see when they have courses available. You're going to want to look for that stuff early. A lot of people get interested in fire, at the beginning of the season or mid-season, and it's a lot of the time that's simply too late. So you're going to do that. And then another great resource is going to be the Facebook Wildland pages. There's some contracting pages. There's tons. And, Facebook is Facebook. It's kind of goofy, but it is a great resource.
I think it's
so
the
making
only
a post on there.
Is that, only main database for everything of Wildland for getting jobs. In the contracting, where I always get the federal side, which is a whole nother enchilada. But for the contracting, it's really,
Sure.
I don't know if you know anything, but that's Facebook, is it?
Yep. Yeah. There's really not a whole lot else that's out there.
We got Journeyman.
Yeah. The best way.
Journeyman, right? Have we heard of them yet?
Negative.
Journeyman is a new app. I got it last year or something. I forgot what it was, but it's kind of like an Instagram, but for wildland stuff. So you can get jobs off of it, RT-130s, that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. But
Nice.
still, Facebook is the king. This is like a new app that they're starting to do. But yeah,
sure. Yeah, and and as far as using Facebook, you can make a post looking for an RT-130 or an FFT2 course.
yesterday or last week.
There you go. So yeah, that's very helpful. And then, if you're able to locate a contractor that's in your area, some people are going to be more helpful than others. But if you're able to get in contact with a local contractor, that's very helpful. They can kind of point you in a direction, who they use for their people, or just another outfit that they might know about for training. And I guess another resource would be contacting local fire departments, right? Agencies a lot of the time are kind of gun shy about giving training to the quote unquote layman, right? Someone who's not in their agency, but they also have a little bit of info, and they might know someone who is an MOU that's in your area. On the East Coast, definitely tougher than the West Coast. And sometimes you have to travel. Even on the West Coast, I've traveled 3 hours before for training, and it's just kind of, it's what you got to do. It's a big investment for your future and for the ability to be able to go out, right?
That's what I did last year.
Yeah, and I guess
I have contacted my local guys here, the volunteer crew, and their chief was willing to do it, and he looked into it and said he can do it. So, it worked for the people that I was going to go work for, and it worked for these guys. So really just reached out, making those phone calls, and not being afraid to get no, and just keep going.
Yep. Yeah. It's one of those types of things where you have to be persistent, right? So if the first avenue that you take doesn't work out, then
keep going,
keep pushing. If you want it bad enough, there's plenty of training opportunities, and some contractors, if you're willing to, quote unquote, commit to them, they're going to do their best to find training for you, whether it's locally or sending you out. Some contractors will pay for the trip. But that being said, I think it's always the best route to pay for your own. When you pay for it, then that's your certification. No one's holding anything from you. And it's, then you're kind of free to go where you want, when you want, not trying to pry the certifications out of someone else's hands.
That's the best bit of advice I got last year was get all your own certifications. You need to own everything. And that has really helped because, jumping around to different contractors, it gets a little sticky sometimes of why are you going over there? Why did I pay you for this? Yada, yada, yada. So it definitely helps to hold your own
big
certs.
Time. And holding a hard copy of all of your original certifications is mandatory. Having, the physical hard copies, digital hard copies, and making sure you know where they're at when you're on incident. Before you get to the incident, you have to give it to the contractor before you're hired by them so that they can do the verification process. Yeah, all super important. But yeah, at the end of the day, the training, it's not, cheap, but it's not expensive. And then once you have that qualification, as long as you are active on fire, it's a forever kind of a thing. I believe it's 5 years is where that qualification lapses, and then you'll have to redo. You start from square one. So if you have, firefighter 1 or engine boss qualification and you're inactive for 5 years, technically that just completely washes and you have to start from the bottom. So,
which, I mean,
yeah.
I did mine last year for the first time, everything ground up. And that cost me, without airfare, without anything, that was just the class was $600. To be able to go out and make what I was making as a teacher in 4 months, being able to do that just at a whim, let's go $600 and be able to go do all that other stuff is crazy.
Sure. Yeah.
The amount of money you can make in this industry is pretty phenomenal, with very low entry cost, which with structure, you're looking at probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years of schooling with the Fire 1, Fire 2 stuff, EMT, et cetera, probably about 10 grand all in all. If you don't get on the volley crew, any trade, you're really looking at $3,000, $4,000, $10,000 to do any real welding or whatever the trade may be. And you're looking 2, 3, 4 years in college, out the roof for whatever, 4 years is 100,000 plus nowadays. So just to be able to get out of high school, college, career that you don't want to do anymore, and be able to jump into something like this at such a low entry point cost wise, is phenomenal. And a week, 5 days, back to back with the shelter deployment. They didn't do pack test where I went, which was the Colorado Fire Camp, which is a great camp, highly suggest it. But it was the point of entry is so low, and it's if people are out there looking for stuff to do that they don't really know what to do and they want adventure and traveling, camping, and all this stuff. Everyone I'm talking to, the only reason I started this podcast was because I would talk to people and I'd tell them what I did this summer, and, what I'm planning on doing in the future. And they, well, where do I go to look for this? What's this? I'm sending links to everything that's all confusing. And they're like, wait, why I'm confused? So I was like, well, why don't I just condense it all into one space where I can say, hey, go check this out, because this is a good resource.
Yeah. And like you said, the cost of, entry, it's very low. Yeah. You're looking at, your training, and then you've got pretty much just your boots. The contractors are most of the time going to provide you with your yellows and your greens. They for sure providing the hard hats, packs, all of the other necessary, outfitting. But yeah, I mean, you can get classes as cheap as, there's some blended courses for the Firefighter 2, where you're going to do a portion of it online, and then you have some, in-class coursework and a field day. I know of a contractor in the Spokane area that's offering, it's $150 just for that FFT2. So, you're looking at, $200 to $500 for a pair of boots, and then $150 for your FFT2. And then your online FEMA courses, your pack tests, and you're ready to roll.
And those FEMA courses are free.
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Which is awesome.
Free FEMA courses. What is it? I believe it's the IS 100 and 700 that you have to take for the Firefighter 2. It's free. It's online, and it takes a little bit of work, but yeah, comparatively, it's very low entry, and the amount of time that it takes is incredibly short compared to
other things.
That's a very often asked question is how long did it take you to get your training, and I tell them it was essentially a long weekend of training. There's a lot of guys offer 3, 4, 5 day classes. I mean, there's as short as 3-day classes that you're ready to rock. So. And I guess after this, I'll send you some links to those NWCG, and I guess NWCG portals or whatever you want to call them.
I'll put them in the show notes.
Show you. Yep. Perfect. Yeah. So that people can kind of check their area, see their MOUs. MOU is the training, the people that provide training, so that it's more easily accessible. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thanks, man. Appreciate you taking the time, and I'll have you back on. Maybe talk about how to navigate that Viper DPL list and how to look it up, and what does everything mean, and we'll kind of check in with you maybe midway through the season if you're not too busy.
Absolutely. Right, yeah. And
appreciate it.
We'll talk soon. Good seeing you, and good talking to you.
Talk to you soon.
Peace.